You never know.
All right, perfect. All right, so thank you everybody for joining us today. We are here to talk about custom settings in TeamRaiser with the one and only Jeremy Reynolds from Zero Prostate Cancer. Obviously, if you've been around TeamRaiser, Luminate very long at all, you've been around in these parts, you should already know Jeremy. If you don't know him from BB Dev days, then you should meet him over in the community. I'm sure you're going to be at BBCon as well, so I guess I see kind of an eye roll and a chin scratch, but hopefully you'll be at BBCon. Somebody can catch you there. So Jeremy, thank you for building out this presentation and stuff. I'm going to go on mute and hide my camera, and I'll just let you take the wheel. I'll let you know. I'll kind of monitor chat. I'll ping you or kind of sound off if anybody's in there with a question and stuff, just to keep you abreast of that. But it's all yours.
Good. All right, and I've got your chat over in the right window. So if you see me looking over here, it's what I'm looking at. But let's get into it. So today I'm going to cover. I'm going to actually try to break this up into 3 different sections, where we've got something that's really for the entry level code, and then something that goes a little bit deeper into it, and then something that kind of shows what's behind the curtain a little bit here for the more advanced devs. And this is going to kind of be a grab bag. I love me some interactivity. I love it when Kent's on, because he's great at running that kind of back and forth. But feel free at any time, pipe up, and happy to stop, clarify, back up, or go into detail about where things can be possible. So I'm Jeremy. I am a senior software engineer at Zero Prostate Cancer, and been with Luminate since back in the day, before it was Luminate, before Blackbot had actually bought Convio, and love just the flexibility of everything that it's able to do. And really, when you look across the ecosystem at what handles all the different use cases that you have and really covers all of your needs, Luminate's great at it. And it's very expandable if you know how to get into it. Zero is pretty much what the name says on the tin. We are out to eliminate the misery of prostate cancer. It's the most common cancer. It's pretty similar to breast cancer in terms of when people get it, how easily you can survive it if you catch it early, how difficult it is to survive if you don't. Our mission, we use Luminate, we use Razor's Edge NXT, we use a couple of external, sources like Double a Donation for workplace matching, and Bonfire just launched a new integration for selling t-shirts in their events. We do a lot on Luminate and TeamRaiser specifically to run our event series. And I should probably show what my next slide is, so I don't have to guess at what I'm about to say next. But here's a breakdown of all of our products, that just different programs that we're using. And not all of them are front-facing on Luminate Online, but all of them somehow touch Luminate Online. And Luminate is great at what it does right out of the box, but some of the pieces are kind of stitched together for some really old modules that just haven't gotten the love because things are kind of being focused more on NXT, like ticketed events is a good example of that. Other pieces are really still pretty much as good as you're going to get in any ecosystem that I can imagine. Their email module and their campaign module, their ability to segment audiences and all that. And so we use Luminate for an awful lot. But when you come across those kind of friction points where it's not doing exactly what you want it to do, that's where the customization comes in. I'm going to take a look at some of the simpler and more complex things that we've done. So here, if you're looking at, these are all the different things we're doing right off the bat. Right here are the darker colors. All of those have been in one way or another touched to extend the capabilities using some of the techniques I'm going to cover here today. Some more so than others. Tee-off is one of the things that we use ticketed events for, because originally it was more of a selling sponsorship for a golf outing as opposed to the fundraising that we'd have with our endurance or our national run walk. Donation forms, a couple of years ago, if you are able to catch on YouTube the video of talking about how to take multiple donation forms and use the same setting across multiple forms instead of having to go update 6 different forms. Yesterday, I think Kyle was reviewing how he created a page builder system to be able to make one-click mobile payments without having to recreate that form and make different campaigns all based on the same form. We'd done a little different way of doing that. I think I covered that a couple of years ago, so I probably won't get to it today. But the long and the short of it is, whether it's trying to make a full screen video overlay your actual content of your fundraising system, whether it's trying to take multiple places where you'd have to do about 1,000 settings and simplify it down to one place with 5 settings, whether it's just making your front appear differently. If you haven't seen yesterday, go ahead and check out the On Demand of Kyle. He broke down some of his favorite hacks that he's done and tricks for Luminate, and he's got some great walkthrough of some of the things that he's been able to do. So here is just a screenshot of some of our different LO properties. You've got our Runwalk series. It's in 50 cities. It is the main place where you build community. You've got our endurance, which is pretty similar to anybody else's endurance program. You know, you didn't get the lottery, you want to go to a once in a lifetime triathlon with Ironman Kona or something, and you work with a charity to get in instead. The donation form in the upper right here, you can see this is an example of one where we've got 7 different variations, all using the same settings. We've got our Grow and Give program, we've got a sponsor form for our Run Walk, and then we've got our Policy Summit fundraising platform. Everything you see circled here are some level of customization that you wouldn't have right out of the box. For example, TeamRaiser, to do a fundraiser, does but doesn't have a built-in way to associate a picture with an event. So you want to have, in this case, the endurance programs, we've got a logo that goes to the Chicago Marathon, the Rock and Roll Marathon, FOMAR, to actually associate it so that you've got it built into the settings of your TeamRaiser, and then it spits out into something required some customization. Having things that can look at some settings somewhere and then overhaul the page. At the upper left, you'll see in our Runwalk system, we've got a logo, and I'll talk a little bit about what we did when COVID hit to give ourselves the ability to decide if this is going live, if this is going to go virtual, and how do we output the page to reflect that. Local sponsorship donations is a really simple one. It's really just when you've got 50 different cities and you need 50 different donation forms, how do you easily kind of create a new city without having to spend all the time to create a new form? And then the setting thing I'd referred to earlier with our donation forms in the upper right. So taking a look at this, here's a good example. With our email system in TeamRaiser, there's a couple different email systems within Luminate. One of them is tied directly into TeamRaiser, and it kind of has the intel of what's happening with that specific fundraising event. So whereas our normal email system, the global campaigns of email and Luminate are really meant for, you're going to send out a newsletter, you're going to send out an appeal. It's pretty static information that doesn't really change. That uses one piece of software within Luminate. The coaching email system in TeamRaiser actually knows a little bit about the event. It knows the context of exactly what's happening with that event. So you can basically take it and say, I know how many dollars this event has raised. I know the street location of this event. I know who the sponsors are. And that's something that you can't do without some workarounds in the normal email system. The thing is, the more you use those customizations, the more you start to get into a system where if you're using Luminate right out of the box, we changed the date. COVID hit and now we're virtual. Now I got to go find all the different places where I actually referenced the date because it just changed to 8 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. or whatever, right? I have to go find where did I in that WYSIWYG have it and hope I didn't miss any, right? You have this peppered throughout our site. What if instead you could actually reference a single setting within Luminate and actually have it spit out in both places? And so you can see, for example, our specific setup with our Run Walk events. When you want to participate in the Run Walk in Washington, D.C., you're thinking, I live in Washington, D.C., but we call that the capital area because in DC, you've got Baltimore, you've got Arlington, you've got DC proper, you've got all the different outskirts. And they all are kind of considered the same area. And so there's a good chance that if you live just across the Potomac, you'll hop onto the ferry and come across the ferry if you're going to do something in the Market District or something, right? So we have a different name, capital area run walk in this case, than we have of the city that we're going to say, which is DC or maybe Alexandria, Virginia, right? So you can see the second thing here is not only is the name of the event maybe not the same as the name of the city, but we also have the venue could be in a different location. So in this case, you're thinking about where the race is. We're talking about it like it's in DC. We call it the capital area, which isn't the same thing. So we can't just use the city name. And it's not even located in DC. It's located in Arlington, Virginia. So we needed multiple settings, one for the name, one for the city of record, one for the location. Another good example would be our Baltimore Run Walk. It is done in memorial of one of the well-known urologists in that area. And so it's named after him as the Stanford J. Siegel event for whatever. And if you're looking for it, you're never going to find, you wouldn't know that's Baltimore from the name. So we're going to have in your listing, it's in Baltimore. The actual event is in Towson, which I don't know if that's a city or a suburb because I don't live in the area. And then of course the name is named in his honor. Another simple one is just who is the point of contact within our recruitment and within our different races. So we have a race director, but then they don't actually work for Zero. A lot of times they live in the community and they're just kind of taking the lead on herding all the kittens. But then we also have a chapter director at Zero who's a full-time employee and works with that race director to help make them successful and works within the organization as a full-time employee. But then you've also got sometimes where you're just doing an appeal and you want the CEO to be the voice, or maybe you want to have a surrogate be the voice. Whatever you might want. You want to be just officially from a blank face of Zero. So one of the things we have here is a chapter director where we can automatically insert that to something and we can override it. And so we can capture, here's the name of the race director, here's the name of the chapter director, so that when we have something like how to contact Zero, we can spit it out automatically and all control that. So that let's say one of those people ends up pivoting and going to a different territory, right? They only work in Virginia instead of working in Virginia and DC. Don't want to have to find all of this. So I put it into a setting. So let me go to the next slide here. Here's the no code version of it, right? So we've got all these different dynamic principles that we've got throughout the site. One of those would be the background picture in the upper left here of that run walk. We got the guy flexing, beautiful family. What if you would want to take our normal template that has him as the default image in it, but you actually have a beautiful shot just particular to DC where the Capitol's in the background, where there's somebody running in front of the White House, and you'd like to be able to swap that out. It's a really, really hairy proposition if you're not a developer to get into the blueprint of a run walk event or any other event. Blueprints are very powerful, and you definitely have the ability to launch the nukes if you made a mistake when editing it. So how would we actually control that? Well, what we've done within this is basically set a check within the code of that, within the code of the blueprint, so that nobody has to know how I did it. All they need to know is if they want to change this banner, instead of running with the default, if they upload an image that has the event ID in the name of the image, it will swap that out. So instead of Runwalk City banner, it says Runwalk City 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 banner, and now it swaps that out. All they have to do is add images to the system. There's enough stuff within Luminate to actually say, does this file exist when I see a file name? And if it doesn't, fall back to another file. So you can actually set a default within the tech and nobody has to know code to do it. The big one is that we use all the time here. This is your default view of Illuminate instance. And you can see step 13, the greeting page, most of the settings. This creates some different tags that can be pulled from in other situations. And this is basically what you get out of the box. In our case, the cool thing about this is you can use it and you could use these settings across the site. They generate some reusable tags so that you can pull that information and put it into your page. But sponsor name or image file name one, sponsor name or image file name two, like most of these things are very particular. Yeah, we got event coordinator name, which I referenced earlier, but what if I don't need their phone and email? So what we were able to do is go into Illuminate, and we actually did a little bit of a remix so that if you don't know anything about the system, you just walked in off the street, when you walk into the page, now all of a sudden, instead of having all these particular things that may or may not be useful, we use those exact same fields to generate the exact same codes, but now we spit it out with very specific things that are particular to every event. So we have a place on our site where it says, here's the impact your city has had. And we don't want that to be $0 on day one of the event when it's launched, or $100 because it just started yesterday and only one gift has been given. We have the ability to basically just do the math, and you can put in what the previous year's impact was, and it'll spit it out and do the math between that and this year, put them together, and Bob's your uncle, right? Illuminate spits out a very specific date format. Well, let's say we want to have the day of the week. That really doesn't come out of the box. Well, so if we entered in the date right here, we can actually then take this and remix it and spit out just the day Saturday, or just June 17th, or tomorrow, even if we want to. Start time. And you can see throughout here, these are these different settings do some fairly fancy things behind the scene to automatically spit out into the blueprint with no editing at all. And if I have a zero staff contact change from Lishy Dent to Jeremy Reynolds, all I got to do is type that in, and all of my emails update, all of my pages update, all my coaching updates. It all updates. Very cool. I referenced earlier that we've got a different city from a different title, from a different like spoken title and a venue title, right? So you can see there's the state that we're doing it in. What do we want to call that state, right? If we were to do a Chicago area race, maybe we'd want to actually just say Chicago. Whereas if we're in West Virginia, we want to do the entire state. We can control that. Venue, city, and state they referenced. And so it's all very straightforward, no special knowledge needed. Then you get to the stuff that's a little more complicated. So sometimes you can just do a text string, like what is the link to the URL? How do you get to something that's a little bit more complicated? You need to get a list or something. Let's say you need a bulleted list, or you need a block of text that's going to spit out with line breaks in it. If you're not a coder, this may already look obscene to you. But if you have basic HTML abilities, when you look at this, you can see that it's not all that complicated HTML. But if I made you go into a WYSIWYG and turn off the code view and then go find where you need to edit this, it'd be a nightmare. There'd be a lot to look at, and it'd be really tough to change just this one little tiny snippet of text on the page. So we've created this system where we've actually defined some S tags and then put a bunch of extra formatting in here so that you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit, all the person looking at has to see that this is content, and it takes HTML, and it's the presenting partner logo. So without really knowing what's happening behind the scenes, I don't know if you can see this all this well, but you can actually just take a look at this and see that it's presenting partner logo, and then you can see if you're looking at it's a simple link with an image tag and the presenting partner. Sometimes we don't call it the presenting partner. Sometimes we call it a gold partner or something, and it all just comes down to the preference of the person in that given city and what they need. So we can customize that, but again, without getting into WYSIWYG and a huge wall of text or having to worry about where I find it and edit the blueprint. We've got a bunch of different sayings like that, but you can see here, I've commented this a little bit so that you can see the color. Within Illuminate, it's going to look just like a wall of text, but even then, when you scan it, you should be able to tell the difference. It helps a lot. Let's talk about COVID. We all probably lived through it. And within the course of a week, right before all of our races, or maybe right after all of our races is launched, the entire universe shut down, right? Suddenly, we had to go virtual, and nobody knew what that meant. We just knew that we couldn't be in person because we couldn't leave our front yard. So what do? It just happened to turn out we had redesigned our website, and we were unveiling the brand new redesign with the kickoff. So we had just built the entire world with the assumption that, yeah, you have a virtual component. We call it Snooze for Dudes. You can sleep in and still fundraise, and it's a virtual fundraising page. Well, now that's the only option in the world. and we suddenly had to pivot. So that's where the power to be able to update 100 different places in one little line of text becomes hugely clutch and critical. Here's what the pivot looked like. You know, you had to rebrand, you had high priority announcements. What's going to happen is, well, we've got this one where we don't know the status. Are they going to cancel? Are they going to wait out COVID and see if it's going to actually blow over? And then they're just going to postpone it. Well, now I got all those dates and location. Oh, the venue canceled. Now we got to go to another place. And eventually you're like, I would like to figure out how to go to a black hole and jump into it now, right? We ended up doing a live video, which I do not recommend. It was a lot of work, but every one of our cities had a Facebook Live that happened, and we broadcast it both on Facebook Live, but for all the people that won't do Facebook, we also broadcasted it right there onto the page so that all you had to do was come to the page. And then when you loaded it about 15 minutes before, you'd start to see a countdown in a pop-up window. When you close that page, it's the same page as it always was in the background. There's a little link in a box in the middle to say reopen that pop-up if you want. But for the most part, you could find your normal site. So somebody wants to give a last-minute gift, but we also didn't have to have everybody figure out what is the URL for our Facebook. Well, how do you do that? I mean, we're talking about inserting a live polled video, a different one for every event on the site. How exactly do we do that? If you're not a developer, it's really a non-starter to figure out how to make a pop-up modal appear, let alone to actually make one with an embedded video. And then you also notice on here, it says visit the virtual exhibit hall. Every city had a dedicated sponsors gallery that was unique to each one. So how do you do that? Well, here's how you do it. You just simply add this tag. Now, it's not low code, but it's low-ish code. All you need to do is know the URL, and we had a template file where you could just insert the tag with the Facebook Live video, and then just put in the URL of where a video is happening, and it would do the rest for you. We had it set on a timer so that when the time came for it to launch, it would just automatically appear. 15 minutes before it, it would automatically appear. And once the video was over, it would automatically disappear and turn into a link. So we updated the page about 4 times that day, but all it took from the user who is a event manager was to go in here and add this little snippet of code to a configuration file. I'm blitzing through just because we are going through time. We got about 7 minutes. If anybody has any questions, again, I'll just say, throw it out there. Here is another place where we actually did a fairly radical change, is we would change the logo. So we actually, if you look at our settings, one of the settings here is if something was canceled, rescheduled, postponed, or moved online. You can see right there in the middle. So if somebody put the word canceled in there, it would actually trigger where our event details box that had the time in and change it into a bright red saying this event has been canceled and blah, 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 blah with some default text we had. If it was rescheduled, it would not delete all of it, but it would make a huge thing and a pop-up message saying the important note, this has been rescheduled, postponed, moved online. All of this was automatically able to trigger the changes that we would need based on our email. So now our email template, our email, when you'd send it out without any settings from the admin side, would go look at that setting on the event and say, oh, I'm a moved online event. I need to show the virtual logo. It would update the email template. It would also update the web page there. You can also see that there's some hybrid language there. So just the title, there's some default text that you can override if you're an admin, but it by default would say this is an in-person event. If it made it virtual only by moved online, then it would not say in person. You can also see we've got these little Bootstrap pillboxes to show the different details of if you've got a hybrid event. So now hybrid event's kind of difficult because we've got an online app, the Charge Run event app, that you need to download on your phone if you want to participate on the day of the event and run through your neighborhood. But if you're in person, you've got all the standard details. We need the ability to kind of turn that on and off. Instead of having to go and code a button and then an alternate tab, and you got to know how Bootstrap works to do hiding and revealing stuff, that's a nightmare for anybody who's not a coder. Nope, all you got to do is change that word into moved online and it does it for you. I mentioned before the date formatting that it's able to pull from. All these are just done and nobody has to know really anything to make those trigger. Now, how did we do that? we are getting real down to the wire, 5 minutes here, but here's a combination. We used the Convio API. We used some of my ridiculous S tag, nested S tags inside conditionals and so forth. And we used some JavaScript to use those two different pieces and spit things out onto the page. So we're still kind of in the low code aspect here, but here's what, if you were doing an email through our system. To do good email, I talked a little bit about the S84 tags last year in my presentation. You need to put a lot of CSS into an email to make sure that everything looks good, whether you're looking in Gmail or Apple Mail or Outlook or dark mode or light mode. Rather than making each person who is editing these have to put in a million lines of CSS on every single tag, instead we just kind of created these S tags that kind of spit out all those details for you, right? So preview text. Normally in an email, if you look at a Gmail or an Outlook, you will see there's a preview next to your subject. You got who it's from, what's the subject title, and then a snippet of text. Well, if you look at our email thing, at the top we got a logo and we got a link to the website and we got the name, and in some things we've got a donate button. So that preview text by default would say 0 logo, website donate, capillary run walk, and it's just a big old run on. We can override that, but it's kind of a tough setting. So rather than making anybody actually know how do I actually code the email to have a hidden sentence that shows us that pre-mail, we just did the same thing as before where we defined an S tag that automatically creates itself, and now all you gotta do is put in the text that you wanna show at the top of your Gmail. The comment blocks, you can see, make it easy so that we can do something more powerful without overwhelming the user and actually have in human speak what any of that stuff does. The simplified CSS, you can see on the right, it's what's highlighted in the red. And the S84 tags to spit out things. Again, I covered this last year in my session, but one of the things that we could do is take that date and I want to spit it out to be, what is the official city? Well, rather than having to know that's S42 FRID city, I can say just this and it spits it out. And I've got a bunch of complicated logic that says, is there an official city defined? Is it different than, it looks at that step 13 and then it falls back to step 3 and then it falls back to the title of the event and it spits out the one intelligently. So I don't end up having a blank entry because I didn't have that setting on one event, but I do on another. Makes it all simplified. All you need to do is look at it and say, well, I don't know what most of this stuff means, but I see it's the run walk, info, location, official city. Okay, that probably just spits out the official city name. And that lets me say something like, you're coming to the Boston Run Walk. We hope to see you in person here in Townsend or whatever. I said Boston, but Baltimore. And we can actually say what the venue city is so that we don't have anybody like trying to figure out, wait, is it in Boston or is it in this other place? We can actually automate that. And you don't have to go through 50 events and figure out what that is. And then we got the fancier stuff. And again, this is the S84 presentation from last year, but to do an HTML button in an email that looks like that register now here is an absolute mess of code. It's a table nested in a table with table headers and style. It's a mess. You don't want it. So we simplified that down just to using that S tag that's highlighted in the red. It's still a fairly ugly block of text, but you have no idea how much simpler it is compared to the real thing. How did I update the HTML on the step 13 to rename those things? If you actually get into your LO instance and you edit the admin wrapper JavaScript, mind you, this will void your warranty. At the point where you start messing with stuff like this, support is not going to be able to help you. So people in the community can help you, but do this and be advised that you need to make sure that you know what you're doing before you start messing with your admin, because if you booger up your admin, I mean, you're not even going to be able to load up the page and know what's going on, right? So, but anyway, it's pretty simple JavaScript. You can see it here. We will actually have this presentation downloadable too within our presentation guide. Here is just a taste of the conditionals that I have, because remember I said like before, oh, how do you do that so that the Facebook movie is going to spit it out? Well, I've got conditionals here that says, okay, how many days are we from the event? Is it more than one? If not, yeah, okay, the event's in the past and here's your default text, unless I override it and then put in the override text. And then, events in the future, I'm going to do all this. And without having, this is what the person would need to know if we didn't have this simplified system. Good luck. I look at this and I usually have to sit down over a cup of coffee and figure out what I actually wrote here. So it's a lot simpler for somebody who doesn't know. Otherwise, you can have a bad time looking at it. Then there's the S84 again. Check out last year's. In my GitHub repo, you'll also see I cleaned it up to add yesterday's session and some of the code on that, and some of my S84 tags. It's a little more Wild West, but you can kind of go through there and see if anything makes any sense to you. But all it's doing is spitting out this snippet of text. So remember all that extra code I was talking about to make the button? All that tag does is spit out this code. And there's a top one that's much longer and uglier, and it spits out all that code. So you don't need to know it. All you need to know is choose the buttony one. And there you go. I think, I was 30 seconds over. So I guess we're out of time. Feel free to ping me. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, we're actually good. We don't have any. This next session in this room doesn't even start. I mean, you may have to go somewhere though, but as far as this room, there's nobody else going to come in and try to shove us out for 30 minutes. But as always, I mean, I love it when I see, E tags, obviously, we're not supposed to talk a lot about them, but like C tags, T tags, all those different tags and stuff that are out there with TeamRaiser. It's just always amazing to see when people, I can always count on you to dive into something to make something easy. Yes, there's a lot of legwork at the front end of it and doing that architecture in your head or on a whiteboard or something to see how you want it to flow, but it's possible to making changes. And we saw that big time. I will say, even aside from TeamRaiser and doing like event changes real quick and stuff, man, if you have an event and your organization goes through rebranding all of a sudden, having stuff like that in place to where you just change it in one spot and it goes across everywhere makes it way easier. I mean, we've seen a lot of organizations split, and we've seen some mergers happen. A lot of mergers happen in the past 2 or 3 years, and it's one of those deals where I'm always like, do it this way this time. Set it up with some of these conditional content elements in there where you can the site config has some of that, but some of it you got to power it through another source of data point to be able to put it in there and control it. So that's really good stuff. No questions or anything. I think what's your next big thing as far as, what do you see as far as the next big kind of conditional exploration you're doing for your events? Obviously, you're talking about like DIY, evergreen. You kind of mentioned before we kicked off talking about just giving being a component of that as well. But is there anything else that you're working on as far as a big conditional exploration right now?
Yeah, so we're actually about to, in a month and a half, and anybody who's gone through this knows my pain, but I'm about to lose my earphones apparently. Hold on, let me make sure my Bluetooth's about to, all right, I got 10%, I should make it. So we're about to relaunch our entire front end zerocancer.org website, and we just rebranded. So we rebranded in February to be Zero Prostate Cancer and Zero the End of Prostate Cancer, which I'm always glad for a shorter name. Lost the battle of just turning us into Zero Cancer because that would still be even shorter. I love short, right? But we are actually going to change from WordPress over to Drupal, and that's going to be dark, dark days of development and trying to data migrate over. But one of the things that ends up doing is gives us the opportunity to say, well, Drupal does some things in a lot more developer-friendly, data-friendly way. Whereas WordPress is kind of like going to the store and buying Chef Boyardee or buying a nice dinner that's prepackaged and frozen, or not even frozen, is made in the deli. Drupal is like going out and buying all of your ingredients and going and cooking. And it takes a lot more work, but you can do a lot more things. So I could see us actually doing quite a bit there. There is one thing I've never seen before. You've seen, I won't call out the particular competitor to Blackbaud, but there are some different solutions where they will send a push request to your website to make a note that somebody just made a donation, right? Mm-hmm. But even that, there's nothing that does that with events. So if somebody were to sign up for an event over Luminate, what if it could push to your main website saying, Joe just signed up for the run walk, or Joe just got a $500 donation to his run walk page? That could all be done through the API. But it's all the kind of stuff that you customize. So Francis, I see your question about future LO updates that'll mess up customizations. That's a good question. You know, Luminate's actually been getting some pretty great the iteration lately, right? They just added within the last year, they've added Venmo payments in community this morning. If you're trolling around on community, you'll see that they actually, I didn't realize this either, have already rolled out donor cover on the mobile pay form. So that's new. And if I had built a donation form myself offsite that uses the Luminate API to submit that, how am I going to do that? I don't know. Nobody would know how to get donor cover on their offsite form, right? So that's the sort of thing where those kind of updates, it's not so much that they break, it's that if I have a really, really customized Luminate website for a run walk, and we actually are going through this exact issue right now. Venmo is released as a payment option that can work through mobile pay, but not through the standard donation form. The stuff that uses mobile pay uses Bootstrap 3, which was made, I think, a decade ago. And our site's made on 3, and so is everybody else's. Bootstrap's modern version is 6, I think. And almost half the hacks that I have in JavaScript come out of the box in Bootstrap 6. But I had to build them from scratch, or somebody else did. Well, now I'm kind of stuck in this cycle of I can't just switch over to Bootstrap 6. I'm going to have to redo the whole thing. And I can't really take advantage of mobile pay, even though there's a way to do TeamRaiser payments through mobile pay. Can't really do that because I'm using a different version of Bootstrap than the one it's using, and it breaks my site, right? So if I wanted to build that, now I got to go build it myself. And my team has a really hard time understanding it. They're like, why does Blackbot offer this to, other people, but not us? And it's like, well, actually, it's on me. And we can fix it, but then we have to choose our priorities and say, well, do we roll to a less customized site where we get those things for free, but we're kind of dependent on when things hit the roadmap? Do we build it ourselves, but then something cool hits the roadmap and we don't get it? Or do we have enough of my time set aside where I can actually go in and figure out how to make those things work?
Yeah, those days of that. Well, those days of people being built on PC, their participant center on PC2, there's a lot of cool stuff was built on that. And then PC3 came along. Now, for the most part, if we update anything and it's PC3 connected, you're pretty safe. But a lot of those PC2 folks, I'm sure they're still, I haven't seen any or heard about any lately, but I'm sure there's some of that. So there's always that risk of something breaking. A lot of the stuff though, when you're using the S tags, conditionals, things like that, E tags to pull stuff out of the URL parameters, or other data parameters stuff, a lot of that's usually pretty safe. I don't think we'd ever break anything around that, but I won't say never. There's always that slim chance, but
yeah, I know. I mean, that was actually something I was going to say, is that in the last, I don't know, 5 years, there've maybe been 4 new methods added to the REST API. So and none of them have changed. And they're going through a project right now at Blackbot to change the documentation and move it over to the same place where Sky API and everything's made on Sky UX and all that. So that's all happening, but that's the most recent change. I think they added when Facebook fundraising came through, they added an API method for that, right? As we all saw 2 days ago, fundraising Facebook integration just made a massive change. And even with that, I was actually on the EAP where theoretically we were going to go and be kind of the test study to have Meta go ahead and switch us over, and everything breaks, I'll go ahead and respond to it. It went so smoothly that I heard absolutely nothing. I'm like, so I got that email along with everybody else, and I'm like, I guess the APA went well if I never even got told, right? And so that's a good example of, actually it's kind of wild how well Blackbot's developers do at releasing new features without breaking everything else. Usually if something is borked, it's because I did it, right? At the same time, there's also challenges they have to work around. I think we all in this room know about the anti-spam measure where you can no longer send an email, and all 6 people that's affected at my organization. Good thing about that is that, Yibu and I jumped up, and Kent from Atlanta also jumped up with some examples of exactly how you can work around that. And the Hive Mind over at Community is a great resource to figure those things out, ask questions, and come up with ideas. And then you got the geniuses like DNL that can come in and just do stuff that's absolute witchcraft, and I'm sure that they can jump into. So
yeah, that's what they need is their company slogan now. Absolute witchcraft. There we go.
it is.
That sells some retainer contracts.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything. I will say, like, for the Facebook changes, those will be rolled out by Meta. Meta will be switching those as they come. We've done all of our part, and then Meta will kind of be switching those through the end of the month and stuff. So knock on wood, everything should go smooth with that, like it did with you in your EAP of it and everything. So really hoping everything runs smooth on that. And like Jeremy said, if you're in this session and you've never chatted with us over in the Blackbot community or been involved in some of those posts, when that whole participant center email thing kind of dropped really quick, there was a lot of great feedback over there. I did a post over there to let everybody know this was coming, and then there were just some great examples of Jeremy and others working through kind of solutions and solutions to their customizations that they felt needed to be done. So please go over there in the community. We always can use some big brains over there to join in some conversation, especially when something hot drops like that that's going to kind of disrupt some things. Kind of helps kind of calm the waters a little bit. Like, oh my goodness, the sky is not falling. It's just we got to make some adjustments and stuff. So I appreciate your contribution over there too, Jeremy, as well.
Yeah, but I mean, the upshot of that is for everybody else is how rare that is really something that is a credit to Blackbot, right? And so you think about the implications of Blackbot having to shut down all of their payment process customizations that were developed hand in hand with Facebook for their specific use case. And then Facebook just says, well, you got a month. It's kind of like what Reddit's trying to do to third-party apps right now. You got a month to figure this out and then you're toast. And being able to actually do that and not have really anything melt down is really incredible. And so I mean, that's the track record they've got, and of not breaking things that I have a lot of confidence in them because of it.
Well, they wanted us to do it at first in March, I think was the date. So Michelle is great. Michelle and that whole team, Kylie and all them are great about just doing everything possible to make things a smooth major change. So and I have total faith in them. But if anybody has any questions, obviously Jeremy's here. Find him here. Find him in the community. Jeremy, again, thanks for bringing some just juicy goodness to the TeamRaiser Illuminate Online discussion and stuff. Always look forward to your sessions. So thanks a million, man, for coming in and doing this one.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. All right, I want to kill the recording.